The Montana winter came early that year, brutal and unforgiving. Jacob Whitmore stood on the porch of his cabin as snow fell in thick curtains, blocking out the mountains he'd called home for 15 years. At 43, he was a rancher, a widower, and a man who preferred the company of horses to people. His wife Sarah had died 3 years ago, leaving him alone on 200 acres of land that felt emptier without her. He worked the ranch alone now, kept to himself, spoke to maybe 5 people a month. It was the life he'd chosen after grief had hollowed him out. The knock on his door came just after dark, soft and hesitant. Jacob almost didn't hear it over the wind. When he opened the door, he found a young woman standing in the snow, shivering violently. She was Native American, maybe mid-20s, wearing traditional dress that was beautiful but entirely inadequate for the blizzard raging around her. The buckskin was adorned with intricate beadwork, white feathers, and red patterns that spoke of careful craftsmanship. But it was thin, designed for ceremony rather than survival. Her long black hair was braided and dusted with snow. Her face was striking but etched with exhaustion and fear, and she was barely able to stand. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "May I sleep in your cabin, sir? It's freezing outside. I won't be trouble. I just need shelter until morning." Jacob stared at her for a moment, processing. Out here, miles from town, in a blizzard that had already dropped 8 inches of snow. How had she gotten here? Why was she dressed like this? "Come in," he said, stepping aside. "Quickly, you're half frozen already." She stumbled inside and Jacob caught her elbow, guiding her to the chair near the wood stove. She collapsed into it, her whole body shaking. "I'm going to get you blankets," Jacob said. "And hot coffee. Don't move." He returned with wool blankets that had belonged to Sarah, draping them over the woman's shoulders. He poured coffee from the pot that was always warming on the stove and pressed the mug into her trembling hands. "Drink this, slowly." She obeyed, her fingers barely able to grip the mug. Jacob crouched by the stove, adding more wood, building the fire higher. The cabin was small, one main room with a sleeping loft, but it was solid and warm. "What's your name?" Jacob asked. "Ayanna," she said quietly. "Ayanna Red Cloud. I'm from the Northern Cheyenne Reservation, about 30 miles east of here." "30 miles?" Jacob's voice sharpened. "In this storm? How did you get here?" Ayanna looked down at the coffee. "I was running, got turned around in the snow. I don't know exactly how far I came. I just kept moving because I knew if I stopped, I'd freeze." "Running from what?" She was silent for a long moment. When she looked up, Jacob saw fear in her eyes, real, bone-deep fear. "My uncle. He arranged a marriage for me, to a man who beat his first wife so badly she lost hearing in one ear. I refused. So my uncle locked me in a room and said I had 2 choices: marry him tomorrow, or be shamed and cast out of the family." Her voice steadied with anger. "I chose neither. I went out the window during the ceremony preparations. Just ran. I was wearing this dress for the wedding. I didn't have time to change. I just ran." Jacob felt something stir in his chest, anger at men who thought they owned women. Respect for this young woman who'd chosen frozen wilderness over forced marriage. "You can stay here as long as you need," Jacob said. "I'll take the loft. You take my bed. In the morning, if the storm clears, we'll figure out next steps. If you want to go back, I'll drive you. If you don't, we'll figure out somewhere safe." Ayanna's eyes filled with tears. "You don't know me. I could be lying. Why would you help me?" "Because my wife Sarah would have helped you," Jacob said simply, "and because no one should be forced to marry someone they don't want to marry. That's not culture. That's cruelty." The storm lasted 3 days. The snow piled 6 feet high in drifts, making travel impossible. Jacob and Ayanna were trapped together in the small cabin, and in those 3 days, they talked more than Jacob had talked to anyone in 3 years. Ayanna told him about her life on the reservation, about being raised by her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident when she was 10, about her uncle taking control of her life after her grandmother passed 2 years ago, about her love of traditional crafts, and her dream of opening a business selling beadwork and weavings. "But my uncle said that was foolish," Ayanna said. "He said my job was to marry well, have children, take care of a husband. That my dreams didn't matter." Jacob told her about Sarah, about building this ranch together, about her battle with cancer and the 2 years he'd spent watching her fade, about the loneliness that had settled into his bones after she died. She made me promise I wouldn't disappear into grief, Jacob said, that I'd keep living. But I haven't done a good job of keeping that promise. I work, I sleep, that's about it. Grief isn't something you get over, Ayanna said gently. My grandmother told me that. She said grief is love with nowhere to go. You don't stop loving someone just because they're gone. On the 4th day, the storm broke. The sky cleared to brilliant blue and the world was buried in white. Jacob spent the morning shoveling paths and checking on his horses in the barn. When he came back inside, Ayanna had made breakfast with the supplies she'd found in his kitchen. I should call someone, Jacob said. Let people know you're safe. Your family will be worried. My uncle won't be worried, Ayanna said quietly. He'll be angry. And the man I was supposed to marry, he's not a good person. If I go back, they'll lock me up until I agree to the marriage. Or worse. Then you don't go back, Jacob said. Not to them. But you have rights. Legal rights. I know a lawyer in town. Someone who handles cases like this. We can get you protection. Make sure you're safe. Over the next 2 weeks, that's exactly what they did. Jacob drove Ayanna to meet with a lawyer who specialized in indigenous rights. They filed for a protective order against her uncle and the man he tried to force her to marry. They contacted social services on the reservation and reported the situation. And during that time, Ayanna stayed at Jacob's cabin. She helped with the ranch work. She cooked meals that filled the house with scents it hadn't known since Sarah died. She talked to him about Sarah, asking questions, letting him remember without feeling guilty for moving forward. She sounds like she was wonderful, Ayanna said one evening. She was, Jacob agreed. And she would have liked you. She always said the strongest people are the ones who run toward freedom even when the path is terrifying. 2 months after that snowy night, Ayanna moved into town. Jacob helped her rent a small studio apartment and set up a workshop for her beadwork. She started selling her crafts at local markets and online, building the business she'd always dreamed of. But she came out to the ranch 3 times a week. To help with chores, she said. To learn ranching, she claimed. Really, both of them knew it was because they'd become each other's family. One spring evening, a year after the night Ayanna had knocked on his door, Jacob found her sitting on the porch at sunset. She'd brought dinner, as she often did. They ate together and watched the mountains turn pink and gold. I've been thinking, Jacob said carefully, about asking you something, but I don't want you to feel pressured, or like you owe me anything. Because you don't. Ayanna looked at him with those dark eyes that had been frightened once but were strong now. What do you want to ask? I want to ask if you'd consider staying. Here, permanently, not as a guest or a ranch hand, as my partner, in all the ways that word can mean. He paused. I'm 20 years older than you, I know that, and you've been through trauma. The last thing you need is another man trying to control your life. So if the answer is no, nothing changes. You're still family. You're still welcome here. But I needed you to know that I love you. That somewhere between that first night and now, my grief made room for joy again. And that joy is you. Ayanna was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, the first truly carefree smile Jacob had seen from her. I ran through a blizzard in a wedding dress to escape being trapped in a marriage I didn't choose. Why would I say no to a marriage I'm freely choosing? Yes, Jacob. Yes to all of it. To partnership. To building something together. To choosing each other. They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony that honored both their traditions. Ayanna wore buckskin she'd made herself, this time with a warm coat over it. Jacob wore his best suit and Sarah's wedding ring on a chain around his neck, with Ayanna's blessing. At the reception, Ayanna's grandmother's sister, who'd secretly supported her escape and reconnected with her afterward, gave a toast. A year ago, Ayanna ran from a prison. Tonight, she runs toward freedom. That's the difference between force and choice. One makes you smaller. The other lets you grow. If this story touched you, please like and share it with someone who needs reminded that running toward freedom is always braver than staying in captivity. Subscribe for more stories about choosing your own path. And comment below about a time you took a risk to choose freedom over safety. Your courage might inspire someone else to take that leap today.